Okay, Sudarshan, shall we get started, please?
Yes, Madhu, please start.
Yeah, okay. Badram Karanebihi Shruniyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Ryajatraha Sthirairangair Tushtuvam Vyashema Devahitai Yadayuhu Swastina Indro Vridrashravaha Swastina Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastina Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Brihaspatir Dadatu Yo antah pravishya mamavacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akila shaktidhara swadamna anyamshta hastacharana shravanat tvagadin prana namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam lasatu srimad tirtendurno hridambare yadvachas chandrika swanta santapam vinikrantati padavakya pramanajnan pranamya shirasa gurun vyakarishe yata bhotam vishnu tattva vinirnayam Devam Narayanam Natva Sarvadosha Vivarjitam Paripurnam Gurumshchan Gitartam Vakshami Leshataha. So good evening everyone. This is we are halfway through chapter 15. We've been contemplating on chapter 15 for about a couple of months now. So hopefully we should be able to finish the next 10 verses over the next 3 to 4 weeks, God willing. So before we get started with the main lecture for today, I just wanted to put this slide on, say, our tribute to Hindu scholars of our time. Now, we live in such times of ups and downs. There are good news and not so good news all around us. So the last couple of weeks has Hindu scholars. We have lost some big scholars both in India and UK, and I thought that we start our class on a somber note, but also gain inspiration from these giants who have done so much for Hinduism in the West. So I want to pay tribute to Sri J. Lakhani, whom we all know in the UK, has been a Hindu leader. He has been a very prolific orator on the Advaita school of Vedanta, a theoretical physicist by trade, but has served British Hindus a lot more in his way in which he comes across and distributes the knowledge of Hindu Vedanta. I've heard him speak on several occasions. He's a very powerful orator and tries to bring his arguments very convincingly. And from a kid's perspective in the UK, he has done a huge service for the youth. I.e., he has been instrumental in bringing Hinduisms to schools. He has written books for Hinduism, and my kids have read his books to go through GCSE in Hinduism, and many kids across the UK are really grateful for his vision around Hinduisms for school. If we want to inspire our children to take up Hinduism, we really need to catch them early. And I think that's the spirit in which J. Lakhani has conducted the affairs of his life. So a big thank you and a celebration for a great human being. One of the things that has always stuck me every time I've heard his talk is religious pluralism has been his mantra always. I think about we may all have differences in how we approach the big schemes, the grand scheme of things, but everybody respects each other and admire each other for their work. So that religious pluralism, not within the Sanatana Dharma, but across the spectrum of religions in this world, I think J. Lakhani has been quite vocal about this, and he has portrayed our Sanatana Dharma as something that stands for religious pluralism and tolerance in this world. So that was J. Lakhani, and I really wanted to pay tribute to this great Hindu scholar, which UK has lost on the 4th of December. Now, the other great scholar of today, of modern times, is Sri Bannanji Govindacharya, poet, writer, Dvaita scholar. And this morning, when we all woke up, we heard the sad news that he has departed. I have a personal connection with Bananji Govinda Acharya, has been my teacher for years, and not a day has gone without learning something from Bananji. So I want to pass this the slides on to Suresh Kankanwadi ji, who will present three slides as a tribute to this great Dvaita scholar, Bananji Govinda Acharya, and we will also finish off this initial bit with a minute of silence that Suresh ji will coordinate for us. Suresh, thank you.
Thanks, Madhu. As Madhu had just mentioned, this morning we woke up to the news of the sad demise of Vidya Vachaspati Sri Bananji Govindacharya. If we move to the next slide, Madhu, thank you. What we've heard is that when Govindacharya lost his son just a few days ago. And in fact, it was his day 12 of rituals that he was taking part in when he experienced fatigue and then passed away in his residence in Ambalpadi around 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Also that by this evening, his last rites were performed as per the family tradition. A little bit of peep into his early life. Bananji Govindacharya, started his studies under the guidance of his father, Tarka Kesari Sri S. Narayanacharya. And then he was a student of Sri Vidyamanya Tirtha of Palimaru Matha. And if we listen to Bananji's audios, we will find reference to Sri Vidyamanya Tirtha on many occasions. Sri Vidyasamudra Tirtha of Kaniyur Matha shaped his personality. And he also did receive teaching from Sri Vishweshwar Tirtha of the Pejawar Math. He was a great exponent, a great Sanskrit scholar, and for him, he's been addressed to as the Abhinava Panditacharya for the contribution he has done to philosophy. He's got over more than 4,000 pages of Sanskrit literature accredited to his name. And to mention some of his great works, he wrote the Vyakarana Sutra from where Panini had left. And in fact, he's even provided explanations to the meanings to the words that were before Panini's times. A great work, a great contribution to literature by Sri Bananji was the complete reconstruction of works of Madhvacharya. And this was the work of the direct disciple of Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Vrishikesh Tirtha. And he did do the complete reconstruction of this. And this work alone goes to over more than 2,000 pages and across 5 volumes. That just speaks the amount of the vastness of his knowledge and the depth to which he went into. And he was a research scholar himself. And in fact, in the complete reconstruction of this work, he actually added 2 more texts of Sri Madhvacharya, which were hitherto unknown. That was his quest for knowledge and his thirst for wanting to go deep and understand. We know him perhaps better for his oratory skills, at least for me. He was a great orator, and he's got more than 10,000 hours of speeches. It didn't matter what topic it was, be it Vedic literature, be it Mahabharata, be it Ramayana, Puranas. It just floats with ease when you listen to him. and it's always a listener's delight, and then one sort of gets addicted to it, and you simply can't stop listening to it. Madhuji often mentions that there's not a single day that passes in his life that at least an hour of listening to Bandanji's lectures take place. Personally, to me, over the past 5-6 months, when I had started listening to Bandanji, there's not a day that passes without mentioning his name or reference to him in one way or the other. That's the power of narration. That's the power of making even seemingly complex topics very easy for the uninitiated to listen and follow. And he certainly was leading the entire humanity a step closer towards understanding Indian culture, Vedic philosophy, and the right interpretations for the various rituals that we have, most of us have been just following or stopped following, because without understanding the essence or the meaning as to why some of these practices were brought into place for the first in the first instance. I think, at least the way I consider myself, to be fortunate that the Lord willed that we had access to the teachings of this great teacher. I think we should celebrate his life by making sure that we try and imbibe some of his teachings, get a peep into some of his works. More often than not, we ask ourselves, this is an ocean of literature. I mean, this is so complex. Where do I start? Where do I begin? And can I accomplish anything over this lifetime? Just a glimpse into Sri Bandanji's works, the amount of literature he has produced, the amount of speeches he has done, I think is a great inspiration that just tells us the quantum of work that one can actually produce in a lifetime if one wills. That I think is a great contribution of Sri Bandanji, apart from, of course, getting us all closer to understanding personalities of Krishna, Vedavyasa, or Sri Madhvacharya himself. Though a great exponent of Madhva school, he was another doyen of religious pluralism, as Madhu just said, in the sense that he was a scholar. He understood, he read and researched every school of philosophy, and he was able to communicate, connect, and and teach the various nuances and aspects of understanding Vedic literature. Friends, today we've lost access to direct teaching of this great scholar and this great teacher. Madhu, if you just move to the next slide. What I would request is that for all of us to join in prayer to this great Vidvamsa Chetana Vidya Vachaspati Sri Bandanji Govindacharya, in praying that may the leading light of him perpetually guide us. I'll recite the Shanti Mantra, and after that, I would request that we observe a minute's silence in respect of the departed soul. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamayam, mrityorma amritam gamayam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all. Madhu, back to you.
Madhu, I think you're on mute.
So thank you, Suresh Kankaji, for coordinating that. So in the true spirit of Bannanji's teaching and the way he approaches the Gita, let's directly go into what we have been doing over the last 2 months. So just recapitulate, always good to go back to Mahavalokana and Nyaya and then understand what we were doing. So we have done 10 verses of chapter 15, the Purana Purushottama Yoga. So the first 2.5 was about Prakriti or matter. The next 2.5 to 5 verses was about what is it that the jivas need to do, what are the sanas that we need to know to do so that we understand not only the Jagat, but also ourselves and the Supreme Purusha. And then the rest of the chapter 15 is devoted to understanding the supreme human, the supreme being, Krishna, about what Krishna himself talk about himself, what Veda Vyasa describes him from verse 6 to verse 18 and the Falaslokas 19 and 20. So last week we spent up to 10 verses. And today what we will do is we'll do 11, 12 and 13 most likely, and we'll make some entry into the 14th verse. So let's see how it goes. So just to revise the 10th verse where we left last week, it says Utkramantam stitam vapi bunjanam va gunanvitam vimudaha na anupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. That means Utkramantam, when the Supreme Being decides that he has to leave, the jiva along with Mukhya Prana has to leave and then go out of the body. And when the Supreme Being decides that he's going to come down into a body, Mukhya Prana comes along with him and the jivas come along with him and enter into a body. And that is the sthitam for this body. And when this body is there, it does bunjanam, it enjoys lots of things. And then we also understood that although we as souls think that we are enjoying stuff in this material world, in the real scheme of things, it is the Supreme Being who is actually enjoying all the good deeds that we are doing. And he gives us a share of all the good deeds that we have done. Okay. All the bad deeds, all the sakama karma that we are doing, the scheme there is the Supreme leaves it for the jivas to experience that and go through samsara and eventually learn their mistakes and make philosophical progression. So that vimudaha are the idiots who don't see this. They don't understand. Why? Because they do not have shastra anuguna jnana. They do not understand the grand scheme of things. They do not understand the existential questions because they don't seek knowledge through the scriptures. They are more engaged in the material aspects and the material knowledge that gives them pleasure, but they are not interested in the scriptural knowledge that takes them to the transempirical plane. So such a scriptural knowledge is what we call as yatartha jnana. So that yatartha jnana, whoever has got that yatartha jnana alone can see the Supreme through what is called as jnana chakshus. Jnana chakshus means the eyes of wisdom. What are eyes of wisdom? So we discussed that last week. Just to remind you, when we said first eye, we said the first eye is the eye of the gross body. The second eye, we said, is the eye of the subtle body or the linga sharira. The third eye, eye of the jiva swarupa. So we need to awaken our eternal indriya. Our jiva swarupa has to be awakened so that we can see this adhika atma. So that awakening of the jiva swarupa is what we call as self-realization. So that is the essential key here is without self-realization, there is no way in which you're going to have God realization. So the first step for spiritual progress is self-realization. And with self-realization comes the opening up of the third eye. Yeah, that is the jnana chakshu. So next the question is, how does one open the third eye? What is the process? There must be a mechanism. Just because I've read a book, I can't see this, I can't realize myself. I know I exist because I'm conscious. Consciousness, as you know, is a symptom of the soul. So I am conscious, therefore I exist, therefore I am a soul. But what is my nature? How do I relate myself with the Supreme? We just do not know at this point of time, for which we really need to open our third eye. And the question is, how do we do that? So Vedavyasa, the natural progression from 10 is, he then gives you the process by which you can actually open your jnana chakshus. You can actually open your third eye. And how does that operate? So he immediately says, Yatanto yoginashtenam pashyanti atmani avastitam yatanto api akrita atmano na enam pashyanti achetasaha. So this is a very, very clear statement from Krishna. So the first criteria, the first qualification he has sent is yatantaha. Okay, yatantaha is a very significant word there. So what does yatantaha actually means? Yatantaha is a shortened version of a word called yatamanaha. Yatamanaha means effort. Effort means putting in a lot of effort. Yeah, just because I've read a book tonight doesn't mean tomorrow I'm going to be self-realized and I'm going to open up my third eye. This requires a lot of effort. So that's what Vyasa is telling us. If you want to open your third eyes, you need to work towards it. You need to put an effort. That is why he says yatantaha. Okay, so what is that effort about? Where do you put the effort, and what is that effort all about? Okay, so this concept of what is this effort and what kind of effort I should be doing is described very well in Maitreyi Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And we have dealt with this verse a million times again. But what I have not done here before is give you the context in which this Yajnavalkya is actually giving this philosophical discourse to his wife Maitreyi. So the background to this is Yajnavalkya was one of the greatest philosophers of the Vedic times. He had two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani. Yeah. So one day Yajnavalkya decides that he has had enough of, he is finished with Grihastha Ashrama and he wants to take a Vanaprastha and he wants to go to the forest. So at that point, he has a discussion with his wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani, and says, look, I want to go to Vanaprastha. Here is all my material possessions. You can take all my material possessions and I want to go to the do Vanaprastha and carry on with my spiritual progress. So that is the situation in which a philosophical discourse happens. Katyayani is very happy to take up the material possessions of the husband so that she can carry on with a comfortable life. Whereas Maitreyi is not satisfied with all the material possessions, and she asks him the question, if you give me half your property, will I get immortality? If you give me all the wealth, will I reach that supreme state where I will be eternally blissful? She asks him all these bigger questions, and Yajnavalkya starts a philosophical discourse. Yeah. So this particular verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is very famous. You would have heard this so many times. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll read the first verse and pick up a few things. Saho vacha nava are patyuhu kamaya patihi priyo bhavati. Kamaya patihi priyo bhavati nava are jayayo kamaya jaya priya bhavati atmanastu kamaya jayo priya bhavati. And he goes on, and so essentially what it means is Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi, does a husband like his wife because the husband like his wife? No, it is because that supreme being who is actually an indweller inside that husband's soul makes so that the husband loves his wife. Similarly, for a wife to love the husband, the supreme being who is inside the soul of the wife makes the wife like the husband. And similarly for the children, similarly for the property, and he goes on and explains it. That is essentially saying, if you look at this verse, you will know in Vedic times and in Vedic culture, what were all the things that were important for people at that particular society, in that particular society. So Yajnavalkya takes every aspect of Vedic life and says, you like this, you like that, you like everything. Do you think you like it because you like it? No, there is this Antaryamin who is inside you, who likes it, and that is the reason why you like it. And he goes on, and then finally he says, Atma va are drashtavyaha shrotavyo mantavyo nitidyasitavyaha maitreyi. He says, you know that supreme being who is inside you, who is making you do everything. You got to see him, Maitreyi. Unless you see him, you cannot make progress. And you need to see him. That is your self-realization followed by your God realization. Make an effort, make an attempt to see this guy. So in that verse, the last line, Yajnavalkya is giving us three things. He's saying Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, Nitidhyasitavya. Okay, so Shrotavya means hearing. Yeah, Mantavya is ruminating what you have heard and contemplating, and then make yourself firmly established with that knowledge that you've heard. Nitidhyasitavyaha means once you're convinced that this is the right knowledge, then you start go into deep meditation. Yeah. So Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, Nitidhyasitaha, Yatantaha. So that is the relevance of Bhagavad Upanishad statement to this very first word in the line 11 of chapter 15. Yatantaha means effort. Effort of what? Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nitidhyasitavya. All you have to do effort, maybe not just in this life, but for several thousands of lives to come, make those efforts. So the next question that comes is, effort to do Shrotavya of what? Effort to do Mantavya of what? Effort to do Nitidhyasitavya of what? So to answer that question, Vyasa then puts the next word. He says yoginaha. Yatanto yoginaha. Okay, so that yoginaha there has got a couple of meanings there of how you approach this verse. Now I'm going to pause for a minute, just get the activity going within the group. So now this particular, as you know, 18 chapters, every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called yoga. Hatha yoga, Sankhya yoga, now you have Purushottama yoga. So that yoga of each chapter should remind you of what Krishna is saying as yoginaha, yoga. So I'm going to pause there and ask, so what do we understand by each chapter when it says yoga? What does that mean? Contributions, please. So what does the word yoga in each chapter?
Way of doing the means of achieving the way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Suresh. Anybody else has another view on that? Okay. So the yoga, when each chapter goes as yoga, Purushottama yoga, Jnana yoga, Sankhya yoga, Vishada yoga, Vibhuti, etc. yogas. The yoga in Gita, what it means is, as Suresh ji mentioned, yoga means upaya. Upaya means of gaining a knowledge. So when I say Purushottama yoga, it means this chapter is the means of obtaining the knowledge about Purushottama. Okay, so that is the meaning of yoga in this particular context. Of course, yoga has several other meanings. Yoga can be the physical exercise, as it can be the meditation. So here one meaning is Jnana Upaya, and I've sort of put it in a box saying this is Jnana Upaya. So Yatantaha Yoginaha means put effort again and again using knowledge as your means of use knowledge and put an effort. Yeah, so that is your way of putting the effort. Shrotavya, knowledge of what? Through scriptures. Yeah, so it is the scriptural knowledge that you hear and you learn. It is a scriptural knowledge that you ruminate and contemplate. And what you have learned, you go into deep meditation. So that is one way of looking at yoginaha here. The second way of looking at yoginaha is the yoga of what we call as meditation. Yeah, of going into deep contemplation and meditation, what Krishna describes in his Bhagavad Gita chapter. So here comes a quiz. So in which Bhagavad Gita chapter does Krishna deal with dhyana?
Chapter 6.
Harish?
Yeah, chapter 6.
Okay. Any other views? Veena ji had.
Madhuji, yeah, it's fourth chapter. It's Jnana Yoga.
Okay. So you feel fourth chapter as well. Okay. So I think both of you are right. So Dhyana Yoga comes in various chapters. It is discussed, but primarily it is dwelt with in sixth chapter. And I agree with you, Veena ji, also that there is a lot of concepts of dhyana that comes in the fourth chapter as well. So in Gita itself, Krishna gives internal evidence of that jnana chakshuhu, that you're going to see me, right? And I've told you about this dhyana, and he talks about samadhi. Yeah. So in these chapters, you will find Krishna actually describes two types of samadhis. Samadhis means two types of meditation. Okay. Now, one thing I've noticed is most people somehow feel that the Dhyana Yoga is a complicated chapter and it is not meant for people of modern times. That may be one view, but actually for opening up the third eye actually is Dhyana Yoga, and there's no other route to it. Yeah. So there is no to aparokshana besides dhyana. Yeah. So however difficult it might be, whether it is conducive in Kali Yuga or not is all very debatable, but the process very clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita. So what is important for us is when Krishna gives Dhyana Yoga, we should take it seriously. We should not say it is not applicable for modern times, so we will skip it. We will not do Dhyana Yoga. That does not seem to be the right procedure dictated in the Vedas and the Upanishads. It may be a mechanism, but eventually it needs to lead to Dhyana. And Krishna describes two types of samadhis. And this you would have heard and you would have read in Gita. One called Samprajnata Sthiti and Asamprajnata Sthiti. So I just want to open this up for discussion. And people, I know there are friends in this group who are very much into meditation. And perhaps they could describe it to us as to Prajnata Sthiti and Asamprajnata Sthiti. Okay, we have people who are practitioners of meditation here. So some prajnata sthiti means, so in meditation, we need to think about this very carefully. Do your homework and read about this. So when you go into deep meditation and say you're thinking about the Supreme, let's say you're thinking about Krishna at that point, and you look at his image and you're contemplating and you're meditating about him in dhyana. So that prajnata sthiti is a mental construction. So you have seen a vigraha or of Krishna outside, and then your mind has imprinted it. So the senses have gone in, and it has gone into your chetana, chitta. It has gone into your memory shell, and then when you go into meditation, you as a soul, what you have done is you have actually brought those impressions in your mind to your consciousness, and it becomes a mental construct. So if you are seeing what you have seen outside, that is called a samprajnata sthiti, where it is a mental construction. So mental construction is not what Krishna is asking us to do. Krishna is asking us to do what is called asamprajnata sthiti. Prajna means awareness. Yeah, asamprajnata means your mind has to stop. So that stage is what Krishna is talking here. That asamprajnata sthiti state, when the mind stops functioning, at that point the jiva swarupa starts functioning and seeing. Until that point, whatever meditation you do, it is a mental construction at a material platform. But this jnana chakshuhu that Krishna is talking about is the jiva swarupa opening itself and seeing the Supreme who is inside himself. And that will happen only when you go to the asamprajnata, or when the mind stops functioning. Yeah, and when the mind stops functioning and when the Jiva Swarupa starts seeing the Supreme, that situation is called Aparoksha Jnana. So now I've got our birds, then this guy starts directly looking at this. So this is what our man is talking about here. Pashyanti Atmani Avastitam. So when you have gone into this Asamprajnata state, and with his grace, what will happen is you will see this guy, Pashyanti, Atmani, this is this guy, Paramatma here, Avastitam. this Paramatma is there in you. Ava, as you know, he has come down and he is with you. Yeah. Ava apnoti, we have read it in the previous verse. The same Ava concept is coming here. Avastitam. Stita means he is here. Ava means he has come down. So this guy who is with you here next to you, you can see him when you have reached this state. The scheme of things that Krishna is telling us, and I think we need to think about this. It seems like an impossible task, and fortunately or unfortunately, there is no shortcut. There really isn't a shortcut. If there is a shortcut, I would really like to know that if somebody has taken a shortcut and has seen the Supreme, I really would want to know that person and serve him. But as far as I have read in any places, this is the scheme of things that has been described in the Vedas. And that is why in chapter 7, look at that verse, chapter 7, 19th verse, and the 7th chapter, 3rd verse. Perhaps I could get one of our friends to recite these two verses because they are such beautiful verses. Who is going to do that today? 7:19 and 7:3, please. Come on, guys.
Shall I read, Madhuji?
Yeah, please. Okay, so Harish is also going to. So we'll say Sheila ji 19 and Harish 3.
No. Let Harish sing because I have been reciting all the time, isn't it?
Okay, right. Harish, go on.
I want to give Sheila ji some support. Okay. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavanmam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabaha manushyanam sahasreshu kaschidadyaditi siddhaye yatataamapi siddhanam kaschinmam veti tatvatah.
Yeah, beautiful, Harish. Thank you very much. So look at those verses. Krishna has made it very clear. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyante. After millions and millions of births is when a jiva will reach that matured state where he really becomes a knowledgeable person and he's really able to open his eyes and he really will surrender to me. Look at the 3rd verse. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. Yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. There may be millions of fellows who want to, there will be millions of fellows. One among that million may want to know me. Even if there are such millions of fellows, only one fellow can know me properly. Yeah. So Krishna has made it very clear, saying that, mate, this is not an easy task. You have to work very hard at it, and you have to have the capacity. You need to, demonstrate and put your capacity into action. Yatantaha. So that is what he is telling us. Put this effort, because not all of us will be able to achieve this, but at least we can try. If we don't try, we don't stand a chance. If you don't buy the national lottery ticket, you're not going to get the prize. At least you have to buy the lottery ticket. So that is your first. So similarly here, start making the effort and then leave rest to the Supreme. We'll come to the next verse that talk about this. Even in Veda Vyasa, the same Krishna, who is saying this in Gita, and as you know, Veda Vyasa documented that what Krishna was communicating, Veda Vyasa documented that in Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. And the same Veda Vyasa has written Brahmasutras. And in Brahmasutra, there is a very important verse in the 4th Adhyaya, 1st Pada, 1st Sutra. Avrittihi asakrit upadeshat. Okay, the word avrittihi is very important. Avrittihi means again and again. Yeah, again and again. Do again and again Shravana. Do again and again Manana. Keep on doing it. This is what Veda Vyasa is instructing. That is your only route for getting Jnana Chakshushu is Avrittihi. Put the effort again and again. And then in the last verse, you will find that very interesting. In the last verse of Brahmasutra, he says, if you do Avrittihi, then you will read Anavrittihi. You will reach a stage of Anavrittihi Shabdat. Okay, Anavrittihi Shabdat. Look at the word Avrittihi and Anavrittihi. Avrittihi means coming again and again. In this context, it means revision. Whereas Anavrittihi means and you have jnana chakshushu and make philosophical progress, you will cross the material platform and use the trans-empirical platform, and at that stage you will never come back. That is anavritti. Yeah. So Veda Vyasa is also very clear here that it is avrittihi. We need to put effort and effort and effort, which is the only solution to our problem. And Bandanji keeps saying this all the time: put your effort. Otherwise, there is no scope. It all becomes theory. Unless you put effort and put it into practice, you will never have the fruition of your efforts. So now the next slide, the next line goes. So as I said, yatanto
Madhuji, can I ask a question?
yoginashcha yenam pashyanti. Yeah, sure.
Oh, on the previous slide,
Harish?
when you, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the yoga part reference, could that also be referring to the yoga, the darshana, one of the 6 schools of philosophy? Is that a possible meaning of the yoga reference here? I guess is one question. And yeah, I did have one more
Harish,
follow-up.
Yeah.
No,
So
the other question was not
yoga
related.
here, so that's. Yeah. So what you are referring to is the Sankhya school and the yoga school, the Sankhya system and the yoga system. The yoga system, there is a practical aspect of the Sankhya school of philosophy. That is an interesting thought. But mind you, the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is the philosophy of Vedanta. So Vedanta is the 6th school of philosophy. It is the Uttamsa. Yeah. So Bhagavad Gita is the philosophy of the Vedanta. Yeah. So the yoga there is not the yoga of the Sankhya yoga that you are talking about, but there are certain tenets, there are certain traits of that yoga that is all here. So every school, as you know, all the 6 schools of philosophies take their philosophy from the Vedas. So they are all taking it up from the Vedas. The 6 philosophical schools have come about. And the Vedanta school, the 6th school, Uttara Mimamsa school, has also inspired from Vedas. So that is why there are certain.
Okay, all right.
Can you hear me?
That makes sense. Yeah, I think I got the gist of it. I think that makes sense. The one question is when you talk about effort.
Interrupted today, Madhu, your voice is a bit, not that your voice, your speaker, whatever, voice is a bit interrupted today.
Okay, fine. It's internet problem, but I'll get close to the speaker. Yeah. Okay, Harish, go on. Next question.
We missed the last sentence, Madhuji.
So what I was saying was that all 6 schools of philosophies are inspired from the Vedas. So in that sense, Bhagavad Gita is the philosophy of Vedanta. It is a Vedantic philosophy. If you look at the 15th verse, he says, Vedanta Krit Vedavid Evechaham. Krishna himself says Vedanta Krit. So this is the philosophy of the Vedanta. Yeah. So Bhagavad Gita is a philosophy of the 6th school. And it is not the philosophy of the yoga school. But the point there is all 6 schools have inspired from the Vedas. So you have some overlapping concepts, but what Krishna is asking us to do is still the mind to see the Supreme.
I think that's helpful. So just to be clear, there may be overlapping concepts, but if there is a specific, say, Kundalini Yoga piece that's there in Patanjali Yoga Sutra that is about awakening your third eye, that is not what's being referred here. Although there may be some concepts that are similar. Is that the good way of thinking about it?
Yeah, there are some correct. Yeah, there are some concepts that have universal strands to it across the schools. But if that Patanjali yoga system goes for steady mind, so that you open the third eye, and then when you open the third eye, what do you do with opening the third eye? Is it to see the Supreme, or is it to stop at self-realization? There are many schools which stop at self-realization. Advaita is an example of that. So you open your third eye and then you have a self-realization. Then you say, self-realization, I am the Supreme, stop there. Yeah. Whereas the Dvaita system will go further down. It'll say that, okay, I've had self-realization. I want to go and see who that God realization is. And their hypothesis is that I am different from God. So there are those kind of differences.
Okay.
So I think we need to move on to my next slide, Harish. We can come back to Q&A at the end, if you don't mind. Yeah. So next, we go to the next slide. So as we go, yatantaha yoginashtenam pashyanti atmani avasthitam. So we read that. Then yatanto api akrita atmano na enam pashyanti achetasaha. So then he gives a clear advice to us, we fellows here in this material world, particularly living in the West, with all material comforts around us, who are engaged in busy professional lives. He is giving us a very important advice here. Yatanto api akrita atmano na enam pashyanti achetasaha. Okay, so the first part of the slide we have already discussed. Now, who is this akrita atmanaha? Akrita atmanaha. So atmanaha is an important word there. So there, this atmanaha does not mean jiva. Yeah, and we have dealt with this several times. Atma means so many things in so many contexts. It can mean the body. It can mean your mind. It can mean your buddhi. It can mean your jiva, or it can mean the supreme soul or paramatma. All those things can be used for atma in different contexts. So here, atmanaha means your mind. Buddhi is, after all, a component of the mind. So akrita means dirty. Okay. Akrita, ashuddha. Ashuddha buddhayaha is the interpretation. Akrita atmanaha. So now question will be, who is this akrita atmanaha? Yeah, who is this akrita atmanaha? Who has got the dirty mind? Krishna has already reminded us in fifth verse, nirmana nirmoha. Okay, nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. In that, the first words here uses mana and moha. You should not have mana and moha. So the reverse of that is any person who has mana and moha, that is mamakara and ahankara. So that is the first step of a dirty mind. So what Krishna is telling us here is, you might have yatantaha, you might have done yatantaha, you might have done lots of studies, scriptures and so on. And then one day you may realize you are a pandit. You may say, oh, look, I have read everything, like Shvetaketu. You will say, I have read everything, I have now become a pandit. The moment that ego comes, you have become akrita atmanaha. Okay, so that is why the next word makes sense. Yatantaha api. Even though he has made an effort, a lot of effort with Shravana, Manana, and Dhyana, if he has akrita atmanaha, which is if he has mana and moha, if he's got that ego that I am doing it, look what and all I am doing it. Lot and all I am doing. So if he has that ego, then Krishna says that fellow is called achetasaha. Chetasaha. Chetasaha means right knowledge. Achetasaha means he does not have right knowledge. Such fellow na enam pashyanti. Whatever effort he does, he will never ever be able to see me. So he has given us a clear instruction there, that how much ever practice and studies that we do, the moment that ego comes in, that atmana, that ego comes in, Krishna says, I know when your ego comes. The moment it comes, it means that you are achetasaha. That means you will never be able to see me. Okay, so here look at this concept that Vedavyasa is introducing here. On the one hand, he is asking you to do a lot of effort, do effort, and then he is telling us, do that effort, but once you have achieved something, don't get that ego to it. You keep on doing your effort. That is only your job, not to feel egoistic about it and say that I have become a pandit, I have become an acharya. Yeah, so that ego should not be there. So it is talking a lot about effort here. Now, when we have discussed before, Gita is all about Katha Upanishad. So if you look at Katha Upanishad, there is a famous verse that Yama is telling Nachiketa, na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha, na medaya, na bahuna shrutena, yam yevesha vrunute tena labhyaha, tasya esha atma vrivrunote tanun swam. Okay, very beautiful verse where Yama is telling Nachiketa, you can put whatever effort you want. Na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha. You cannot attain him by talking so much about him. Medaya, by studying a lot, you may not be able to attain him. Yeah. So when you look at these two verses, they appear to be contradictory. On the one hand, Vedavyasa is saying, put effort. That is your only way to salvation. But here Yama is saying, whatever effort you put, whatever reading you do, you will still not see him. You will be able to see him only if his grace is available. Yam yevesha vrunute tena labhyaha. Whom he desires that he needs to show himself, to him he will show himself, he is saying. So what that essentially means is there are two aspects to our progress. One is our effort. Yeah, this is like the national lottery ticket. So there has to be that effort that we have to do. And the grace, the slot machine should give us the grace so that we get our number. Similarly, the more effort we do, Atmanaha approach, eventually you will get his grace. And when you get his grace, he will ensure that your third eye is opened. Yeah. So this is the beauty of, as I said before, Gita and Katha Upanishads needs to be kept next to each other when you study Bhagavad Gita, because they make perfect sense. They actually they complement each other, and you can get lots more material out of it. So the first one is our effort, and the second one is his grace. They are not contradictory to each other, they go hand in hand. But the key for our effort is, without ego we carry on doing an effort, is the clear statement from the 11th verse. Hold on to that thought there. The 11th verse is talking about how you can see that supreme being who is inside you. Okay. Now we are going to move to the next bunch of verses. Yeah. Now we are moving to verse 12, 13, and 14. They are beautiful verses in their own right. Now to understand verse 12 to 15, you need to remind yourself of verse 2. Yeah, verse 2. So who is going to recite verse 2, please? And I put it in red box here. Can I have a volunteer to recite the second verse of chapter 15?
Hello, Madhu. Yeah. Okay.
Go on, Neeta.
अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रस्तुता तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके.
Thank you, Neeta ji. So the third line, Adashta Mulani Anusantatani. So if you go back to our discussions a few weeks ago, so Adashta, Ada means the below, which is the material world. Yeah, Adashta is material world. Mula means the root. Urdhva Moolam. Urdhvo Vishnuhu. Yeah. So Mula is Vishnu and Adashta is this material platform, this material world. What does the Mula has done? Anusantatani. Anusantatani means pervaded the entire material creation. Yeah. So when Krishna says in second verse, Adashta Mulani Anusantatani, he is asking us to think about how he creates this universe. And we have dealt with this and we have contrasted this with how a potter makes a pot. So the potter makes a pot, but he stays outside the pot. Whereas our supreme being, he creates the universe, but he also enters inside the universe and looks after it. So that is the difference between creation of a pot and creation of the universe. And that is what this verse is telling you. Adashcha Mulani Anusantatani. Now, what Krishna is doing in verse 12 to 15 is he is expanding that concept. He's expanding that concept to show how he has actually pervaded this entire material creation. And he's looking after every aspect of Brahmanda and every aspect of Pindanda. This Vishnu chap, the Urdhva Mula, is actually looking after it. So that is the key message that you want to take from today's talk, is that Sarva Antaryamitva of the Supreme gets its inspiration from the third line of the second verse. And that is what Vyasa is doing here, of expanding this for our contemplation as shown in the next slide. So now I got the 11th verse on the left and I got the 12th verse on the right. Now again, as we discussed this before, every verse of the Gita and every word is logically placed and moves on to the next concept. So on the left side, what is it? Yatanto yoginashchayam pashyanti atmani avasthitam. Okay, atmani means this fellow who is inside me. Okay, now immediately on the right, what does he say? Yad adityam chedejo jagat basayate akilam yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo viddimamakam. From Pindanda, he's just jumping to the Brahmanda in this verse. If you look at it, he was talking about this body, and immediately he's changed tax and he has gone to Brahmanda on this one here. Why is he gone to Brahmanda here? So I want to stop there and see what do we think that is going on? What is going on in Vedavyas's mind when he's almost feels like he's tangentially going? He could have still dwelt with the Jiva Paramatma combination and the interaction. Why does he have to shift here? That is the first question. And before we do that, let's get somebody else to recite the 12th verse, and then we can think about why this contrast from Brahmanda, from Pindanda, why is he jumped to Brahmanda? So first, 12th verse recitation, please.
Madhuji, shall I?
Yeah, please.
यदादित्यगतं तेजः जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकः.
Thank you very much, Veena ji. So here, he's talking about Pindanda and he's talking about Brahmanda. Why is that contrast? Is any ideas? Let's go into Vedavyasa's mind and see what is he got in mind for us. The clue is in that Katha Upanishad.
Mother Suresha,
Yeah.
I understand. Does he want to convey that the Paramatma that you see within yourself is no different from the Paramatma that is pervading everywhere else? So it is, and there's no difference either in his attribute, in his qualities, and it's the same Paramatma that you're seeing. So now he's beginning to describe the qualities of the Paramatma that you're seeing within yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Suresh. Yeah, that's a brilliant angle to it. Anybody else? Okay, so the Katha Upanishad 1 to 20, it says Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atma Asya Jantor Nihito Guhayam. Yeah, so that verse again is a very popular verse. Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan. Okay, who is the supreme being? He is Anoraniyan. He is smaller than the smallest. Mahato Mahiyan. He is bigger than the biggest that you know. So that tells you in the previous verse, Pashyanti, to see. Yeah. So when you look at to see, he's talking about seeing the supreme. There are two things that you can never see. Us can never see two things. One, which is the smallest of the small, we cannot see it. And one which is the biggest of the biggest, we cannot see. Have we seen Akasha in all its dimensions everywhere? No, we can't, because it's huge. Can we see the quarks? No, because it is so small. So one aspect to it is Pashyanti, means he's reminding us, look, me, I am the smallest of the smallest and I am the biggest of the biggest. So you cannot see either of this. That is one way of looking at it. The other way, as Suresh ji mentioned, is the way I am the smallest of the smallest in your Jiva, I am no different from the biggest of the biggest that I've pervaded this entire universe and I'm looking after it. So that aspect is the same as the aspect inside me. And we have dwelled, the Purnamada Purnamidam should come to your mind of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad when we talk about this. So he moves to Brahmanda for you to now think about, in Brahmanda, how do I operate? How am I as a Sarvantaryami here? For my contemplation, remember 12 to 15, we are talking about the greatness of the Supreme. So here, Krishna is giving certain examples for our contemplation so that we can understand and accept that he is the Sarva Antaryamin of everything that exists in creation. And if you look at our Vedas and Upanishads, you will be very surprised or amazed to know that there are certain concepts that the rishis have taken that makes relevance to our practical life. Yeah. So here, Yad Aditya Gatam, Aditya is taken. Then what is taken? Chandramasi is taken. Then Agni is taken. So three things have been taken in this verse. Yad aditya gatam tejo jagat pasayate agilam yad chandramasi yad chagno tat tejo viddi mamakam. So in the Vedic times and even our present times, we are no different. We only have three means of actually gaining knowledge in the material world, i.e., when there is an object, when light is shed upon it, then we get a knowledge of some sort, or we hear something, or we taste something. So those are all the things. So here he takes tejas, he takes light as a form in our day-to-day life. So for a Vedic civilization, daytime is sun. Everything happens under the sun. And in the night time, there were no tube lights or floodlights, and everything used to happen under the moonlight. Or inside the houses, everybody had their garhapatya. So they all had the fire inside the house because they were all doing agnihotra, they were all doing sacrifices, they all had garihapatya in their house. The fire was constantly burning inside. That fire emitted light that gave light inside the house. So there were only three routes for having light: sunlight, moonlight, and the light that comes from Agni. Now you can extrapolate this, the tube lights, the bulb, everything that we have in modern LED lights, everything that we have in modern times is one form of fire or the other. If the tungsten burns, then you get light. So it's all an extrapolation of fire that we have that gives tejas. So Krishna is saying here, Aditya Gatam Yat Tejaha. You know the sun is emitting light in the daytime. Do you think that sun is able to emit light on its own accord? No, I am actually sitting in that sun. I am actually making that sun god, who is the 12th rank of the Vedic pantheon, to operate in such a way that those nuclear fission reactions are happening in the sun, and all sorts of radiation, including visible light, is coming out of the sun. Okay, so that is what our rishis were doing when they woke up in the morning and looked at the sun. They were looking at not just the light, they were looking at the Surya Mandala. Then they said there must be behind the Surya Mandala, there must be a Surya, a deity must be there who's looking after it. And then inside that deity must be this Antaryaman who is sitting inside, who's making this happen. So behind every conscious thing, behind every material thing, there is a conscious being. And that is what we do in Gayatri Mantra. Yeah. So can I have a volunteer to recite the Gayatri Mantra, please, today? Who is going to volunteer for Gayatri?
Madhuji, shall I do it?
Please.
Om Bhurbhuvaswaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat.
Yeah, brilliant. So Savitu, Tat Savitru, Varenyam. Who is the Savitru? Savitru is not just the sun. The Savitru is the Surya Narayana, who is inside the Surya, who is inside the sun. So the Gayatri mantra that we recite every day is a celebration of Surya Narayana, okay, which comes in Rig Veda. Now, next verse it says Chandramasi. Yeah. So the next one, during the night time, where do we get our light? We get the light from the moon. So the same thing. Do you think that nighttime light that comes from the moon is because of the moon, or the Chandra Devata who controls the moon, or that Antaryami who is inside the Chandra who is doing it? And the conclusion there is, it is that Soma, the supreme with the name Soma, who is inside Chandra, and hence Chandra gets his name, and he controls the Chandra heavenly body, and then the nighttime the light comes in. Okay. Now, Dhanvantri mantra, for example, that you may be familiar with Dhanvantri mantra. The Dhanvantri mantra is in praise of the Chandra, yeah, and the God who is inside the Chandra, the Narayana who is in Chandra in the name of Soma. Yeah, Soma means Saumya. Saumya means he who is very pleasant. Yeah, so this moonlight is very pleasant. It does not burn our skin like the sunlight. It's very pleasant in the night time, because Soma, which means Saumya, is inside and he's making it happen. So the Dhanvantri mantra, for example, celebrates the Chandra. Now look at Agno Yatricha. So then he talks about Yagni. Yachagno Tat Tejo. So Agni. So Agni inside the house. Who is that being celebrated? Look at this. The very first verse of Rig Veda Mandala is Agni Sukta. Yeah. Can I have a volunteer to recite the Agni Sukta, please?
Shall I do it, Madhuji? Is it okay?
Please. Wonderful. Go on.
Agnimile purohitam yajnasya deva mrutwijam hotaram ratnadhatamam.
Very nice. Thank you very much. So that very first was Agnim Ile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam. So who is that Agni that is being celebrated here? It is not the material Agni. It is not the Agni Devata. It is Agni Narayana. That he is the one who is being celebrated in this Rig Veda mantra. Agnim Ile. Okay. So the three things that we do in our routine life, sun, moon, and fire. So he says, Akhilam Jagat Basayate. What do these three fellows do? They give light, Basayate, rays everywhere. Okay, but they don't do it on their own accord. Tat Mamakam Vidhi. It is because of me that they are able to do it, because I am inside them. So as I said, we are in that part of the Bhagavad Gita that celebrates the Antaryamitva of the Supreme. So the same, for example, in the 6th verse, we had Natad Basayate Suryo na Shashanko na Pavakaha Yad Gatva na Nivartante Taddama Paramamama. So in the 6th verse also, he has used the same chaps. He's used the sun, he has used the moon, and he has used the Agni. And he has said, these fellows will not light up my abode. My abode is non-material. And again here, he uses the same thing to show that although these things are material, they operate because I am inside them and making them operate. Okay. There is another beautiful verse in Katha Upanishad which is very similar to this. It says, Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, name vidyuto bhanti kuto ayam agnihi. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam, tasya basa sarvam idam vibhati. Very clear statement from Katha Upanishad where he says it's exactly the same, except that he has also included lightning here, which is Vidyut. Yeah, Vidyut is lightning. So they all operate, and here it is clearly said they all operate because the Supreme is inside them and making them do so. So next time when you see the sun, next time we see the moon, yes, in the UK, seeing the moon is a rare event at night, but sometimes we do see it and it looks beautiful. So when you do see that, remind yourself of this verse, Yat Adityagatam che tejo jagat pasayate akilam yachandramasi yachagno tat tejo vidhi mamakam. So that is the first contemplation of Antaryamiyatva of his creation. So for people like us, what is it that we can appreciate about creation when we go out of our house or when we go to the backyard? We can appreciate the sun. We can appreciate the moon. We can appreciate the fire that we use every day. Use that as your means of contemplation as to how supreme is inside them. You don't necessarily have to go to a temple and look at a deity. Look at this nature around you and appreciate this Antaryamin inside is the key message from the previous verse. So that concept of cosmic Antaryamin, there is a separate Brahmanam, there is a separate section called Antaryami Brahmanam in Bhagavad Upanishad that actually expands this much further. It takes every aspect of the material world that we see and does this upasane of this Antaryamin inside this. So look at this. Again, it says, Yo Agnau Tishtan Na Agnau Antaro Yamayati Yam Agner Na Veda Yasya Agnihi Shariram Yo Agnim Antaro Yamayati Eshata Atma Antaryami Amrutaha. Okay, so that mantra is so important, very popular mantra. Yeshata Atma Antaryami Amrutaha. So this fellow who is inside all the jivas, he is called Antaryami. He is the Amrutaha. He is the eternal one. He is the eternal deathless one. And it talks about Agni. It talks about Ya Aditye Tishtan. Then it talks about Ya Chandra Tarake Tishtan. So it goes on. It takes up the same Surya, Chandra, Agni, and explains how there is Antaryami inside who makes everything happen. So when you look at this verse, you should remind yourself of the Kataka Upanishad verse And you should expand this to the Antaryami Brahmanam. You should use Gita as an introduction to the Antaryami Brahmanam, which actually glorifies this in a much bigger scale. Yeah. So move on to the next slide. So I request one of our friends to recite the 13. So just to remind you, we are in this Antaryami Yatva of Supreme, and that we contemplate that this Supreme is everywhere, using the natural things in this world. What are all the things that we are seeing in our practical life that we can adopt? Now, I want to briefly pause there and remind you, this is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. The fundamental axiomatic truth of Sanatana Dharma is there is this supreme consciousness that pervades entire material creation. Yeah, this is the first principle of Sanatana Dharma, that there is this supreme consciousness that is there everywhere that controls everything. Yeah. So that is what we are dealing with in verse 12 to verse 15. So can we go to verse 13, and can I have a friend contributing to it, please?
Shall I read, Madhuji?
Yeah, please.
गामाविश्य च भूतानि धारयाम्यहमोजसा उष्णामि चौषधी सर्वा सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः.
Thank you very much. Very, very beautifully said. So now what he said is, in the previous verse, he said, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the fire. They all work because I am inside them. Then he comes to earth. He talks about where you are, this earth. Look at this earth itself. And there are some beautiful concepts that come out of it. So before we go into that, I want to remind you of this Taittiriya Upanishad, the verse. We have done this before. So akamayat bahusyam prajayeya iti satapo atapyata satapastaptva idam sarvam asrujata yadidam kincha tat srishtva tadeva anupravishata tad anupravisha satcha tyatcha abhavat. So basically saying, I create and I pervade all aspects of my creation. So hold on to the Taittiriya Upanishad mantra. And when you look at it from this angle, it becomes beautiful. So let's split it open. Gam avishya cha bhutani dharayami aham ojasa. Okay. Gam. Let us take that word Gam. Gam means earth. Yeah. This Prithvi is called Gam. Okay. Avishya means pervaded in this earth. Okay, and it's a dharayami. Okay, there are three words here: gam, avishya, dharayami. Dharayami means I hold it, I protect it. This prithvi, I pervade it and I protect it and I hold it, is the meaning there. Gam, avishya, dharayami. Okay, who? Aham. I do this. So in the Antaryami Brahmanan, there is a mantra. Ya Pruthivyam Tishtan. So it picks up this concept also in Antaryami Brahmanam. Now, this verse, when you look at it, Gam Avishya Dharayami, in classical Bhashyas, it actually talks about Varaha Avatara of Narayana. Gam Avishya Dharayami. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and get contributions about the Varaha Avatara. So my first question there is, which Avatara of Vishnu is Varaha? Which number is this Avatara? And tell us something about Varaha Avatara.
It's the second one, isn't it? Yeah.
Second is Kurma.
Number 3, yeah.
Oh, number 3. Yeah.
Number 3, yes,
I
Sudarshan.
think the story goes that Earth was tilting off its axis. So Vishnu took the Avatara and brought it back into its axis of the, I think it means cosmic ocean, and he brings it back into the orbit.
Okay, thank you, Deval. Very nice. Anybody else? Any other views? Anybody? Any other contributions?
I think there is a view that, we earthly people, we go down in our aspirations, and we sort of, our aspirations, we don't perform well. We go very lower. We perform in a very lower level, like, not thinking about God, and thinking about all this sort of basic stuff, yeah, food, sex, and those sort of things. And then so we go down, yeah, and then in that process, Narayana comes, and then sort of he elevates us from that sort of state to the higher state. So that's one way of looking at it. I may be wrong.
Sudarshan, thank you very much. That's a very, very nice interpretation, because you captured one of the ideas that I was also going to discuss about. So we'll take this up. My next question: why is Varaha always shown as a wild boar? Any idea? Why is he a wild boar? He could have been a tiger or a lion, right? Why did he choose a wild boar?
I think boar has got this tendency to look for food, under the earth, and then it brings it out, some sort of special tubers. That's what it does, eats.
Okay, good. Thank you, Sudarshan. Now, my next question is, okay, sir, Varaha is doing all this. He put, as Deval said, where Earth got tilted, so he put it back and all that. So that is what I hope you understand. You are able to capture why I'm getting at it, because we are in Gam Avishya Dharayami. This Earth I am holding. Okay, that is what we are talking here. So that is directly relevant to Varaha. So Deval, who pushed this Earth away from its orbit or changed its axis of rotation?
Some Rakshasas in Patala, I don't know.
Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So it is Hiranyaksha. So you have then go back and read a little bit of Purana, which is very interesting. It's all this, you have Jaya, Vijaya, who were outside this door of Vaikunta, and the 4 children of Brahma came and he did not let them in, and the story goes on. So Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu are cursed, and they come in 3 different yugas, not yugas, they come in 3 along with Narayana's 3 incarnation. They come in 3 different forms. You know about Ravana, you know about Kumbhakarna and all that. So let's not go there. So it is directly related to Hiranyaksha. Okay, so the story is Hiranyaksha, he actually pushed the Earth's orbit away from its usual orbit. And we all know, if there is a slight change in the axis or a slight change in the orbit around the sun, it can create havoc to planets. And that is very well known in cosmology. So apparently, in the Puranas talk about this happened twice. And Varaha, actually, Narayana takes Varaha avatara and he puts the earth back in its right position. Dharayami. Yeah, Gam Avishya Dharayami. He has done it twice. Now, there is a book by a guy called Immanuel Velikovsky. Some of you might have read his book. It's called Worlds in Collision. So this fellow is a physicist, astronomer, and so on. And he talks about the origins of the solar system. And he talks about the origin of our solar system. And he says that this Earth actually went out of its orbit twice in its history. And that created havoc. Okay. And he cites Varaha Avatara from our Puranas and say, look, this is documented in Varaha Avatara. Fascinating stuff. Velikovsky talking about this. Now that tells you 2 other things here. One, we knew that the Earth was around all along. This Varaha Avatara, which yuga did Varaha Avatara happen? Question.
Satyug.
Thank you. So Satya Yuga is when Varaha Avatara happened, and we all see this picture of Earth being round. So we always knew that Earth was round. Yeah, so that was not new science for us at all. That is another point. And the second point, why is it in Varaha? Why is it in the shape of a wild boar? There are two views on it. One, what Sudarshan mentioned was very interesting, is about we run a very lowly life, and then to lift us up, Vishnu comes in the form of Varaha. Yeah. So now let us think about that word Varaha. So Varaha, and we have discussed this before. The names of the Supreme is not nouns. The names of the Supreme is an adjective. For us, it's a noun, but for him, every name is an adjective because it celebrates a particular quality of the Supreme. So, Varaha. Vara means what? Para. Vara means high. Vara, para. We did this last week, 2 weeks ago, the Vara, para meaning. Vara means high. He is same as para. He is the highest. Vara means Sreshta. He is the most Sreshta, most exalted, most supermost being. Ha means, in the Sanskrit, you will see in many verses, ha means is some kind of exclamation in a very positive way. Varaha. Ha ha ha. We say like that. Varaha. He is the highest. Okay. So that is how the concept of Vara, Varenyam. So we say Tat Savitur Varenyam. Because he is Vara, because he is Sreshta, Varenya means he is worshipable. Yeah, Varenyam. So the words come like that, Vara, Varenyam, and then clouds in Sanskrit is called Varaha. Why? Because they are high. Okay, they are high up in the sky, so they are also called Varaha. So there is a whole, there is a history or etymology around the word Varaha. So one view there is Varaha essentially means his quality, that he is the highest. That is why it is called Varaha. The Puranic interpretation of Varaha is when this Hiranyaksha fellow, he meditated on Chaturmukha Brahma, then the Brahma appeared in front of him. He said, I should not be killed by an Ashura, I should not be killed by Deva, I should not be killed by any animals. And I believe he listed all the animals and forgot to list wild boar. Yeah. So our Vishnu was clever. He said, you fellow, you are a victim of your own ignorance. So I am going to come and destroy you with the instrument of your own ignorance because you forgot to list wild boar. I'm going to come as a half human form and half wild boar, and I'm going to kill you. So that is also another interpretation of this. I hope you you like this, the stories behind Varaha. It's really interesting from a scientific perspective and the etymology of the word. But let's come back. We are drifting a little bit, but let's come back to this. So here Krishna says, Gam Avishya Dharayami. Look, I pervade and I hold this earth, like how I came in Varaha avatar, I did this. And I'm also pervading this earth and holding everything as it works and how it works. So here he's talking about earth. Okay. Then what he says in the next line is, Pushnamicha Oshadihi Sarvaha Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha. Okay. So now I want to remind you, previous verse he talks about Tejas. Yeah, he talked about the various forms of light and fire and everything else. Now he has talked about earth, which is Prithvi. Okay. In the third line, he is going to talk about water. Okay. So these are all the things that we are seeing in our world. We see the gross earth, we see the fire or light, and we see water. And he says, Pushnami cha oshadihi. Yeah. Sarvaha somo bhutva rasatmaka. And that is also very, very interesting here. So I want to open this up now. Pushnami cha aushadihi. So aushadihi means it's a type of plant. Okay. So can I have some views here as to what we think Oshadis are? What are Aushadis?
Aushadhi means medicine.
The nutrient of the plants that it makes the sattva
Okay.
grows in the moonlight.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Deval. Yes, good one. I'll hold on to that. Sudarshan.
I mean, I was saying Aushadhi means medicine, isn't it? Aushadhi.
Medicine. Then what is Vanaspati then? Yeah, okay. Medicine. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Anybody else? So when Krishna is saying Oshadihi, think about two things that we have done so many times. Think about Srimad Bhagavatam. Remember when we did our creation thingies months ago, when we talked about the seventh stage of creation, Shaptamo Mukhya Sargastu Shad Vidastu Chayaha. Vanaspatayo Oshadayaha Lata Tvakvari Viruddho Drumaha. Okay, so seventh stage, the Bhagavatam stage during creation, Shaptamo Mukhya Sargaha. He said the seventh stage of creation is the most important. When the plant kingdom came, yeah, all the plants came on earth, and Bhagavatam actually classifies these plants into 6 types. So Vanaspati, Aushadi, Lata, Tvaksara, Virudha, Dhruma. Okay, let's not go into details of what each one is. So let us take 2. Lata, Soma Lata. You know the Soma juice. Soma juice, I just thought one thing. So that's a creeper. Lata means it's a creeper. The Soma juice that is poured into the Soma sacrifice is actually from a creeper. Now I believe nobody knows what that Soma Lata is. Nobody knows what that creeper is. Yeah, it's gone extinct. Now, Aushadhi, Sudarshan, one thing I said was medicinal or herbs. Now, the Aushadhi, the clue to Aushadhi should be seen within the words. Osha means heat. Okay, so Osha means that which can give you heat. That means that which can give you calories, that which can give you energy. So that means it not only means herbs, it also means food. Yeah, and the classification of Oshadhi is, if this plant makes a fruit, once it makes a fruit, it'll die. So that is the definition of Oshadhi. So that means all the cereals, the rice and wheat and barley and maize and corn and everything that you grow, when you grow them, they make their flour, they make the corn or rice. And after it is done, as you know, then it'll die. Yeah. That is a classic example of an Oshadhi. In the fruit kingdom, the classic example is a banana. A banana tree grows fruits, makes a banana fruit, and then after that the tree has to be cut. Yeah, so those are the examples of Oshadhi. Of course, herbs are also included in Oshadhi, and they also have medicinal values. Primarily, they also give calories. Now look at the verse in Taittiriya Upanishad, and during creation, the Upanishad goes, Tasmadva etasmad atmanaha akasha shambhutaha, akashad vayuhu, vayor agnihi, agner apaha, adabhyo prithvi, prithvyo aushadayaha, aushadabhyo annam, annat purushaha. Okay, so that is important there. So it says Prithivya Aushadayaha. So you have the Prithvi, which is the earth, and then all the plant kingdoms come as stated in Bhagavatam. Prithivya Oshadayaha. What do these Oshadayaha become? They become food. When I say Oshadabho Annam, Annam means not just rice. Annam means food, that which we are dependent on for our sustenance. So the Oshadis become Annam. And eating that annam, purusha comes, annad purushaha. So that is the sequence there. So that Oshadhi is annam, food. So now here is the important concept about food that Krishna is introducing, that again giving us a clue that this civilization in Dwapara Yuga was so advanced. It says sarvaha somaha bhutva rasa atmakaha. So what it says is, Soma means we need to split that open. Somaha means, we know Soma is another name for Chandra. Okay. Now, Soma is also, as I said, is a name of Vishnu because he is Saumya. So the interpretation there is, this Vishnu is inside the Chandra, Bhutva is inside and looking after. And then what he's also doing, he's also looking after water. Rasa means water. Atmakaha means inside. So he is in the moon and he is in all the water. Sarvaha somaha bhutva rasatmakaha. So you could ask me, what does that got to do with Oshadhi here? Because that is what he's saying. Pushnamicha Oshadhihi sarvaha soma bhutva rasatmaka. They should all make sense, isn't it? So the sense there is, Krishna is talking about something called permaculture. Has anybody heard of permaculture? Can somebody contribute here? Have you heard of what is permaculture? It's there. I've written I've taken the pictures out, but have you heard about permaculture? So permaculture, sorry.
I think it's about putting the seeds and growing them according to the phases of the moon.
Correct, sir. Yes, thank you, Sudarshan. I hope you didn't read my slide. So it is permaculture is planting by the phases of the moon. So this is what Krishna is talking about here. We all know sun is necessary for growth of trees and plants and so on. But he is giving us another thing there. He's talking about how these Oshadhis actually are also dependent on the moon. Why? Because I've got this on the right side. Gravitational pull of the moon influences the rise and fall of the tides. It also affects soil moisture, plant sap, and the water table. Yeah, that is clear scientific evidence. This is not something that I've pulled out from some weird article. This everybody knows. You know this full moon day, the waves of the oceans are supposed to be more. It can also have influence on the mental stuff, I'm told, but there may be a different view on this. So what Krishna is saying here is, sun feeds the leaves, Yeah, that we all know because of photosynthesis with sun, the leaves will make food. But moon feeds the roots. Yeah, moon feeds the roots because of the water table and the water sap. And in fact, there is a whole industry out there these days, I'm told, called permaculture. That is actually planting seeds based on the phases of the moon. If you do the planting of the seeds in the second phase of the moon, when the size of the moon is increasing, apparently the roots of those seeds will be much more healthier. Yeah. So this is an established fact of permaculture. And look at our philosophers, our rishis actually talking about this. Pushnamicha oshadihi sarvaha somo bhutva rasatmakaha. I'm actually looking after the water. I'm actually looking after this earth. I'm actually bringing all these plants and I'm helping the whole thing, because the food is also, I am only making those foods on this earth because you are doing all this cultivation in the Vedic times. Look at all the oshadis that you're cultivating. I am actually looking after all that. So he's giving you all these stuff. Why? Because then your next verse will make sense. So now he has spoken about water, he's spoken about earth, and he has spoken about Tejas. Okay, remember these three: Tejas, Prithvi, and Aap. So you are now going to tell me what are these three and in which group do they fall into and why are they important? Tejas, Aap, Prithvi.
Apa means water, Prithvi is earth, Tejas is Agni.
Yeah, they are all components of
Part of Panchabhutas.
Panchabhutas, yeah.
Panchabhutas.
Fantastic. There you got your answer. So Krishna is actually giving you about the Panchabhutas, Tejas, Aap, and Prithvi. So these are the grosser aspects of the Panchabhutas. What are the other two?
Kasha and
Akasha and Vayu.
Yeah.
Why?
Akasha and Vayu. Akasha and Vayu are the subtle ones, whereas it becomes more and more gross with Tejas and then Aap and then Prithvi. Now, if you recall the Upanishad discussions that we had about creation, we spoke something called Trivrit Karana. So the whole material things come about with mixing up of three. The Trivrit Karana is these three: Tejas, Aap, and Prithvi. This is what mixes and becomes everything else, including our bodies. Including our body is only made of these three: earth, water, and fire. Okay, this is all this body is made of. And he is picking up these three to bring you home that idea that everything is made of these three. Now, even the oshadi that you are eating, the food that you are eating is also, I am looking after this food. Yeah. So now what he will do is he will then lead you on to the next verse. You know, that food that I am also responsible for. What do you do every day? You will do prasada, and then you will then eat it. You are going to eat it and put it inside your body. So now look at how he swings between. First he was in Pindanda, then he went into Brahmanda, then from Brahmanda he came to earth. Then he said, in earth, all this cultivation and the food that you're doing. Now in this food, what are you doing? You're putting into your mouth and into your body. Even that I only look after, mate, is what he is trying to say next verse. So the 14th verse, if I can have a volunteer do the 14th verse, and we will stop at just the first word, because the first word, understanding the first word is so critical to understand 14 and 15. So can I have a volunteer for the 14th verse, please?
Madhu, I can go, Harish.
Yeah.
Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayuktaha Pachamyannam Chaturvidham.
Thank you, Harish. Very nice. So that is what he said. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Prana Apana Sama Yuktaha Pachami Annam Chaturvidam. What are you fellows doing? Pachami, you are eating what? Annam, food. What are the types of food? 4 types of food, he said. Chaturvidam, 4 types of food you are eating. What I am doing? Aham in the form of Vaishwanaraha, I am doing all this. So we will deal with the rest of the verse in the next class. But I think the first word there is itself very significant. Aham. Yeah. Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva. Okay. And he has used aham in so many places in this chapter. Aham, aham, he says. Why does he say aham? If it was just mean I, that is a very colloquial I. This aham actually has a higher meaning here, and we have touched this before. Shushrut mentioned this in the last week. Aham is the name of Supreme. Aham is not just I am. Okay, when we did this once about this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad again, where this Aham Brahmasmi is come. Okay, and then it has been taken out of context to imply I am supreme, I am Brahman. And we looked at it in deep, at some depth a few months ago, I think. So it is still worth us remembering and reminding ourselves of that. So in the previous verse in this Upanishad, it goes like this: Tadahuhu Brahma Vidyaya Sarvam Bhavishyantaha Manushya Manyante Kimutad Brahma Aved Yasmat Tat Sarvam Abhavat Iti. Okay, that itself is significant. The previous context, the previous verse, it says, if Brahman knows everything, how did he become somebody who knows everything? Did he have to make effort like us, like yatantaha, avrutihi? Does he have to make effort to know everything? And that is the reason why he became Brahman, is one question that is asked. Immediately the Rishi gives the answer. No. Brahma va idamagra asi tadatmanam yeva avet aham brahma asmi iti tasmat tat sarvam abhavat tad yo devanam pratyabhudyata sa evo tadabhavat tata rishinam tata manushyanam. Okay. And it goes on. So basically what it says is, no, Brahman did not have to make an effort to become all-knowing. Like you and me, we start in our samsara and we are ignorant. Then we read the scriptures, then we learn about the scheme of the universe, then we attain self-realization, then we attain God realization. In the whole scheme of things, we need is grace. So we attain our self-realization, putting in a lot of effort, which is what this week we have discussed. Yatantaha. We put a lot of effort to even know who we are. But this Upanishad says, this fellow knew who he was all the time. He just knew he is Aham Brahma Asmi. So what that means is that word Aham is a name of God. Brahma is a name of God. Asmi is a name of God. Okay, the Aham, what does that Aham actually means? There is internal evidence within Brihadaranyaka Upanishad itself. Hariti Tasya Upanishad Ahamiti. I am Aham. Yeah. So what does that Aham actually mean? Aham, Heya means that which is discardable. Hatum Yogyam Heyam. So it means Hanyamanatvat Ham. Ham means that which we can discard. Mobile phone I can discard when it becomes old. That is Ham. Whereas Aheyatvat, that which cannot be discarded, is called Aham. So it's called Aheyatvat Aham Nama. So Aham means discardable is Aham. Okay. So this Antaryamin who is inside us, we have been talking about Sarva Antaryamitva, and that is why this is important. So this Antaryami who is inside us, he is undiscardable. Can we get rid of him? There is no way in which we could get rid of him. He is already always there. There is no way you can get rid of him. So that is why he is called Aham, which means he is Aheyatva, somebody who is undiscardable. So in this Bhagavad, in this chapter, wherever Krishna says Aham, Aham, you will notice he is talking something about his pervasion. He is talking something about how he is inside the jivas and controlling stuff. Watch those verses very carefully. You will find it very interesting, and how it tallies with and how it concurs with the approach of the rishis. So when here it says Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva, Aham, I have pervaded this in my form as Vaishwanaraha, in these bodies, and I'll do this and that. Prana Apana Samayuktaha, I have pervaded into prana. Prana tattvas. There are 5 pranas. We'll deal with that next week. I have actually pervaded into them as aham, and I look after them and make all this digestion happen and so on. So it's beautiful looking at that word aham. So just taking it as I am would not be doing justice to this verse. Aham should be taken as undiscardable, as somebody which is the name of God himself. Now in the Vedas and Upanishads, you will see this again and again. You will see 2 words. One is called aham and the other one is called ahaha. Okay, so what that means is aham essentially means the name of the Supreme who is your antaryamin and he is inside you. Whereas ahaha is that form or the name of the Supreme who is all pervasive outside. Okay, aham is inside, aha is everywhere, and that exactly is what Narayana Sukta is saying. You will all be very familiar with Narayana Suktam. What does it say? Antarbahishta sarvam vyapya Narayana stitaha. So this Narayana fellow, he is antaha, he is inside you, and he is bahishta. Tat sarvam, everywhere, vyapya, pervaded, Narayana stitaha. That is his play. That is his situation. He is all pervasive is the concept that comes again and again, and this is celebrated here in great depth in verse 12 to 15. So verse 14 and 15 is even more interesting as to how it picks up the idea. We will continue this next week because that Vaishwanaraha Bhutva, Vaishwanaraha word itself is very significant. We need to know about prana tattvas. What are the various pranas? What are the pancha pranas? What do the Upanishads and Gita talk about this and so on? And even the food that we eat, we can classify into 4 types. So this is all very interesting. And then it goes on to the another very important verse in 15. So we should be able to finish 14 and 15 next week. And I think we will not be having time to do the last 5 verses until the new year. There is a grand plan to celebrate Gita Jayanti on the 27th of October, and Sudarshan will be able to share with us the full itinerary within the next few days. We are all working towards a very interesting program for a couple of hours. So I hope you will all join us, and also get your friends, spread the message out, and we'll have a 2 hours Gita Jayanti celebration. We got speakers organized from India, real scholars talking about Gita and so on. So it's going to be an interesting program. So I'll stop there, Sudarshan. Thank you, and we'll take up any questions that you may have. Krishna Pranamas.
Yeah. Thanks, Madhu. Another wonderful lecture. Yeah, questions, please. Madhu, I will start with this question. You probably quite a few months ago, one of these lectures you covered about the journey of the soul, how it comes into the next birth. Yeah, and is that something where I mean, it's connected to what you said today. Like Akashat, not Akashat Vayu, the other one. Annat Purushaga, Savayesha Purusho Nara Samayaha, those sort of things.
Oh yeah, that's all beautiful. That the whole Taittiriya Upanishad, Anandavalli or Brahmandavalli as it's called, that talks about how as soon as Purusha is come, Annat Purushaha, Savayesha, Anna Rasamayaha, and then he talks about the 5 koshas, the Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manonmaya kosha, and it is yes absolutely related, Sudarshan. It will expand into deep philosophy of Taittiriya Upanishad. So maybe God willing, we can do Taittiriya Upanishad at some point, but it's directly relevant. Yes.
Yeah, that's good, Madhu. Yeah, it's good. I think we will probably talk about it more as well. Yeah, thank you. Other questions, please.
No questions, Sudarshan. That means excellent. So we've had a lot of Q&As during the talks anyway, so it was quite interactive.
Right. I think very, very interesting session, and I think very interactive throughout the session. So thank you everybody, and I think we'll give a big hand to Madhu. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhu.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu.